will see you tomorrow night. Pass is caught. Diggs, sideline, touchdown. Batista with a try. Deep left field. No doubt about it. It is caught by Tyree. Here comes Escobar. 1-0 Kansas City. Didn't have the angle. Touchdown. It is gone. It is Seattle's going to the Super Bowl.
Hey, what's going on, sports fans? Welcome back to Field and Diamond Talks. We got a little bit of a late start on the podcast today because of a hardware failure on my end. Absolutely unacceptable. I don't know how I could let that happen. But anyways, enough about that. You know, we got it all figured out, and here we are back for episode 2. We got a lot of support on the first episode. We thank all you so much for that. That's going to propel us to continue doing what we're doing best. So, I'm Caleb, back again for episode 2, and I've got everybody here with me. If y'all want to introduce yourselves again.
Yep, once again, I'm Break. Happy to see all the support on our first episode. Glad to see already somebody engaging with me, especially in the comment section, talking about how the Cubs are not doing too well this year. Appreciate the comment. Keep those coming. That's all right. You can definitely throw some banter at me or any of the other guys in here. We are fully accepting of that, and I will tell to the person that put that comment, yeah, you're not wrong about this year. It's it has been a little rough. So yeah, you can say that we've sucked. But we're coming around right now. I can tell you that. So I'm excited for the rest of the season to see how it plays out. But yeah, definitely have not had a very good very good season as a whole for the Cubs. Yep.
It's Matt again. Appreciate anyone out there who decided to watch the first episode. Keep the comments coming. Anything you think we should be doing or something we could add to next week's episode, feel free to comment anything. Keep the banter coming, especially if it's at the Cubs. I love it. Please do.
Taking shots again.
Gotta do it. But just we appreciate y'all.
Outside of that, I think that we can go ahead and kind of get started with some of the, I should say, the itinerary for what's on the talks tonight. So, Caleb, would you like to go ahead and just kind of read what we're going to be going through, and then we'll start off with our first topic after you're done with all of that?
So, on tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about the very first few games from college football. You know, the few games that happened. I know that really only one counted towards the season, but we still want to bring it up because it was pretty interesting. NFL sleepers, we're going to be talking about who we think might be a little sneaky pick to get into the playoffs, maybe even make a run at the championship this year. MLB's umpire problem. We have a huge problem with the umpires, and we want to talk about that a little bit. And now, our next little topic that we're going to go about, which is what I'm very excited for, our first actual little segment called the Wheel of Nostalgia, where the Wheel of Nostalgia, we'll get into that more later. It's easier for Break to explain it since it was kind of his idea. Championship droughts, we're going to talk about the different championship droughts in the MLB and the NFL, and we're going to talk about who might be the first to break their drought in the coming year. And then Hall of Fame snubs, you know, we're going to talk about who we think should be in the Hall of Fame and who's just been getting held out. So, we'll get straight into it.
All right. So as Caleb just said, you heard the rundown. Glad that we finally have this kind of formalized, everything else. But so this is more of a week 0 college football reaction. But I think none bigger than FSU's loss to Georgia Tech was the big headline. I guess I can kind of speak on it first. Florida State absolutely had a dominating year last year. They got snubbed out of the college football playoff. Matter of fact, the only team in history of the college football playoffs to be undefeated and not make it in. But to start this year on a loss too, and I don't want to say anything to Georgia Tech that's insulting because they've had some pretty good wins over the last couple of years. They had an upset win over Miami last year. People blame that a lot on Miami's coach for running the ball, and then the running back fumbled when they easily could have just taken the knee and gotten out of there. But I mean, I almost want to call it embarrassing to Florida State. I almost want to call that absolutely embarrassing. One of the toughest teams in the history of the ACC, right there, losing to Georgia Tech on a big stage, especially out in Ireland. Um, I almost want to ask a question to like everybody in here. I know Matt, you're not a huge. You kind of just started getting into football, but I mean, and I'm not sure how much Caleb watches for the college football. I know he kind of just started getting into it pretty recently as well. But I almost want to ask, like, could this be the beginning of the end for them? Like, as far as being a top-ranked team, especially for this year. I mean, I know it could be a little bit of an overreaction, but such a dominating program last year should have made, in my opinion, should have made it into the college football playoff, and they probably could have won the whole thing, arguably against Michigan last year. But that's, like I said, it's an embarrassment. Could that be the beginning of the end? I mean, that's if you guys want to weigh in on that, that's yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of an embarrassment. That's really, you put it basically the best you could put it right there. I mean, just looking at the stats of the game as itself, I mean, Georgia Tech almost had 100 more rushing yards than FSU and had a lot more total yards than FSU as well. I mean, yeah, they might have been outclassed in the passing yards a little bit, but at the same time, they were just they were just started on a tear. I mean, they had it tied at the half, and then that nobody scored in the third, and then it's just they got outclassed. I think it just could be the beginning of the end. I think it's just some sloppy plays and stuff like that. You know, I didn't really tune in, but I did see that. Honestly, FSU was getting dragged really hard for this loss. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody on social media was just clowning on them, and I mean, I can't blame them because, you know, this was one of the highest ranked teams that definitely got snubbed from making it into the college football playoffs, and now look at them getting beat by Georgia Tech, and that's no disrespect to Georgia Tech, but this is a top 10 ranked team, and they just got completely blindsided in the middle of Dublin, Ireland.
100%. Agree with all those points, Caleb. And thing about it is, I hear a lot from especially my cousins and uncles because I've got family that lives in the northwestern part of Florida, over in the Pensacola area, and they are huge Florida State fans, and they love to give it to me for being a Notre Dame fan every year. Back in 24, this would have been back when Brian Kelly was still the head coach of Notre Dame and Jameis Winston was playing at Florida State. But that really, really tough game, and I'm sure Caleb will probably throw in a clip or two from it, that Notre Dame lost. I hear about it from him almost every single year because it was such a big disappointment in Notre Dame's history right there because we had to go on the road and we were I personally think we were the better team heading into that game, but unfortunately did come down with the loss. But yeah, just and that's kind of me just going off on a tangent. But yeah, Florida State, such a historically great football program. I mean, they're known for all over college football as having one of the scariest entrances, especially if you're on the road with the war chant. Um, I mean, I get chills every time I watch it, and I think the new College Football 25 game just nailed their college football intro in. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Great, awesome thing. But yeah, so I'll stop going off on a tangent. But yeah, definitely a tough loss for them, and I mean, great win for Georgia Tech. Um, Matt, do you have anything to add on that? If not, I mean, like I said, I know you just kind of started watching college football, so it's all right if you don't. But yeah, I mean, general reaction to that top 10 team losing to an unranked very first, or well, I shouldn't say very first week, the week 0.
Can't can't really weigh in, truthfully, but from what you're saying, a team that was as good as they were last year, losing to a team that isn't even ranked feels like a huge hit for them. And then, I mean, of course, the fan base who watched them do good last year to get beat like this across the seas, in a big game like this seems like a not very good way to start. Now, granted, it was a very close game, but I mean, in the end, a loss is a loss, no matter how many points it is.
Very true. Yeah, especially to an unranked and last second field goal and everything. That's always just the nail in the coffin. There's been so many of those over the years, like the last second field goals. Like the one that always comes to me for the NFL is like the Cowboys one that they tried to do to Mason Crosby, where they called the timeout. Like I think there was a timeout, and then there was a penalty or something, and then they backed him up a little bit further, and then he basically had to make the kick 3 times, and he missed the first 2, and then he made the other one. The other one that always is infamous in my mind, and this one definitely hurts the Bears fans out there, the Cody Parkey double doink. So many of those bad games that just ended on either a field goal miss or field goal in. Tons of them in history. But yeah, I guess we'll kind of move on to with speaking of the NFL, the sleeper picks. So that'll be for the NFL. I can kind of start. So how I did it, I've got technically 3 teams. I'm sure that there will definitely, or sorry, excuse me, I do have 2 teams for each conference. So I do think that there will possibly be more, and like I said, this is super early. We're not even in week 1 yet. I'm not sure when this will get posted, but this was recorded August 25th, so not even in, not even in week 1 yet. So I mean, these teams that I list tonight could absolutely come out on fire and like I predicted, possibly be a sleeper, or they could just absolutely tank. So if I'm absolutely wrong, you can spam me in the comments saying Break doesn't know what the heck he's talking about, but that's all right. I'm fine with it. So I guess I'll kind of start off. So I have my 2 NFC picks right here, and then I've got 2 from the AFC. So the first one that I have, and Matt and I were actually kind of talking about him just probably about 30 minutes ago. It's actually the Cardinals, Arizona Cardinals, and I'll state my reason why. And this is no offense to Caleb's team here, but outside of the San Francisco 49ers, who have a very loaded and talented offense and defense inside the NFC West, what other teams really are there? I know the Los Angeles Rams, they made it to the playoffs last year, had a very tough loss to Detroit by 1 point. But I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, I feel like the Rams played the best football that they possibly could, and the Lions had an off night, and they still won. That's me personally. But to go back on to the Cardinals, I feel like people forget how good really Kyler Murray is. When he is healthy, and this is kind of a hot take personally, when he is healthy and when he is doing very well, he could be like compared to, I said this earlier, he could be compared to like almost a little brother of like Lamar Jackson in my eyes. He's a scrambler. He's a passer. He has really good pocket mobility. He just doesn't have the guys around him. He just does not have the guys around him to succeed. And they just drafted a great target guy, Marvin Harrison. They only had and then the thing to look forward from, they only won 4 games last season, but they also had a ton of injuries. Murray didn't play for most of the year. They were having different quarterbacks left and right. It seemed like Josh Dobbs was their quarterback at one point, and then they were switching around to others that had moved in there. I'm sure Caleb might have a graphic for the other guys that were in there, but I didn't pay attention too much to the Cardinals last season. But I know Josh Dobbs was like their go-to guy at first before he got dealt to the Vikings. But personally, yeah, I think they could have if they could have like a positive win season, they could maybe sneak their way in. I'm not saying these guys are like for sure like Super Bowl winners or like for sure going to win a playoff game, but they could sneak their way in, I feel like. So general reactions to that, guys. I know that Caleb, that's kind of your division, so I know that you could kind of weigh in on the NFC West a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you made really good points. I'm not going to sit there and disagree with anything you said because, yeah, you can sit there and say, yeah, the Rams did have a good season and everything, but at the same time, there's just too much uncertainty on their roster. And
Stafford's not getting any younger.
no, he's not. I mean,
Still a good quarterback, but he's getting up there in age, you know.
oh,
They're 36, I think, right now. 36 or 37. He's pretty old.
yeah, we can figure it out. And I mean, it's just really, I mean, if you think about it, Kyler hasn't had weapons around him, and that's been part of his issue is that if he was healthy and had the weapons, he'd be great. And that's possible. But, with Marvin Harrison Jr., James Conner, and, he's still got Buda Baker on the defense.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Their defense last year, they honestly were not. I mean, they kind of fell off, especially midway through the year. But like I said, they had injuries. Their defense is not the worst. There are like some better record-wise teams that have a worse defense, in my opinion. Like compared to last year is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, and that might be kind of a hot take. Let me know in the comments if you think that that's just an absolute terrible pick. I mean, you can weigh in on it, like I said, guys. But that's one of my NFC picks. Anybody else got anything else to say about the Cardinals? If not, I'll go ahead and move on.
I don't think I got anything really. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, kind of hit the nail. Like I said, I took lots of notes for this podcast. I had a long drive home from Rockford. So my other NFC pick, and you could argue that this isn't really like a sleeper pick because they're still a decent team. And I personally speaking, until I almost said until proven guilty. I guess I could really say until proven guilty. Personally, I think the Packers are the second best team in the NFC North, and I think that they're an NFL sleeper.
Ooh.
Here's my reasoning on it. So, Jordan Love, of course, we discussed him a little bit last episode with him being signed to the biggest contract deal as a quarterback. Personally, I think that puts him in a prove it situation. Prove that you can do this, or else the Packers may find themselves kind of backpedaling a little bit. And they are known as a historically great team, not only just at the quarterback position. I mean, you talk about like they have not had a rookie quarterback start. I think the stat was, I read it the other day, they haven't had a rookie quarterback start since like 1987. Because they had Brett Favre sit behind the previous man there. Aaron Rodgers sat under Brett Favre, and then Jordan Love sat under Aaron Rodgers. And now Jordan Love is kind of there, and he's taken over the helm. But not only that, they've also had some really good acquisitions in the offseason. They signed Josh Jacobs, which we also discussed. I think that's definitely a really good 1-2 punch with him and A.J. Dillon. Defensively, they drafted some really promising rookies. Javon Bullard being one of the headliners in that one. The big free agent acquisitions that they got on the defensive side of the ball, former Giant Xavier McKinney, was definitely sad to see him go. Corey Ballantyne, that was another one. So they definitely have the tools to do it. Do I see them winning the division? Absolutely not. I think that this is the Lions' division to lose. But I think the Packers, that's why I kind of had them as a sleeper pick. I definitely think that they could like qualify for the playoffs pretty handily, I would say, like as a 10 maybe 9-win team at the worst. But also I feel like they're going to be one of the lower seeds if they do get in. But they're a sleeper pick in my eyes, and so that's kind of my opinion on that team. So
definitely definitely. I mean, those are some good picks. I was waiting to see what you were going to pick because it was kind of a little bit different than what I had picked.
Okay. Who you got?
Okay, um, I guess I could start with the NFC since that's where we started. One of my picks, and it's kind of like what you would say with whenever you brought up the Packers. You said I wouldn't consider them a sleeper. Um, One of my picks, like that might sneak their way into the Super Bowl, and they were pretty close last year. I would almost say I feel like Detroit might be able to make it happen this year. And it's just like for the reason I said. I mean, if you think about it, they were so close and they just weren't able to make it happen. They just barely got stuffed by San Francisco because they were on an absolute tear and they could have went all the way, but it just obviously wasn't meant to be. But I mean, if you just look at the entire roster for the Lions, I mean, it's just stacked. Jared Goff, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams.
Don't forget Gibbs, that rookie running back, man, and then David Montgomery also splitting the carries with him. I mean, that's just that's an absolute unit of an offense. And then defensively, they've got a lot of young guys that really stepped up last year. I feel like for them,
absolutely. Aiden Hutchinson, huge.
Yeah, especially Aiden Hutchinson. I was just gonna say him. That is very, very good. Very, very good guy. Matt, I know you, like I said, I stated it earlier, and I don't want to make Matt to seem kind of be like a bandwagon football fan. I'm not trying to do that anytime I call him out for just watching football last year. I know that he previously, back whenever we were in because I've known Matt for a very long time. If I didn't state that already, I've also known Caleb for a very long time. But Matt since what was Matt first grade?
First grade, so if I counted, that's 18 years at this point.
About 18 years at this point. So yeah, but I remember Matt being kind of a Steelers fan back when they were kind of good, and then he kind of drifted away from football a little bit, and then he's back into it now. He's a big Miami Dolphins fan, so I'm all for that. But do you have any points to weigh in on here? I feel like I don't want to leave you out on this, so if you have any points to the ones we picked, so that's the Cardinals, Packers, and then Caleb just stated the Lions.
I like both your picks. I like what you said about Jordan Love. I didn't know much about him before, truthfully. Like I said, I mainly focused on the Dolphins, and that was it. Any other outside team was like, meh, they're there. But what you said about him having to prove himself this year, I agree with that. And I think I agree with Caleb just a little bit more on the Lions, just because of they were so close last year. I feel like that is the hunger that they need and the power of friendship that they have with Dan Campbell as their coach might be able to. I think that it'll be tough. I can see it being one of the better divisions to watch if it's a back and forth. But that's really what I think I can weigh in at the moment.
Don't get me started on Dan the Man, dude. I'd run through a brick. I'd run through a brick wall for that guy, dude. He's every clip I've ever seen of him. He just, oh man, he gets so emotional. Probably one of my favorite coaches overall in the NFL. Like, dude, just, he's something. He's something else. I love how he just kind of came. I don't want to say he kind of came out of the woodwork. He played for the Lions. Wasn't a super great player, but he played for the Lions at one point in time as a tight end. But man, he just kind of came out there and just showed that he could really take charge of a team. I really love Dan Campbell. I would love if for whatever reason the Lions moved on and the Giants were to scoop him up, but the chances of that happening are super low. Not to say anything bad about Dable. I am a Brian Dable fan for the Giants head coach, but definitely love me some Dan Campbell. But did you have another one, Caleb, for the NFC? I don't want to move on and not get to your pick at all.
I did, and I'm gonna say it's incredibly bold.
All right, let's hear it.
And I mean, oh man, I almost feel like I'm gonna cause an earthquake just by saying it, but a team
Oh,
that
this should be good.
and okay, so I know that I'm probably gonna be looked at a little crazy when I say this, but I could almost see Chicago making a deep run. And here's why I say that. They've improved a lot on their roster since from last year. I mean, Caleb Williams, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, Cole Kmet still there. That's a bunch of huge options for Caleb Williams. I mean, and then their defense, Montez Sweat, among other guys. And if you think about it, they just went 4-0 in preseason, which I know it's preseason. You can take that with a grain of salt, but I feel like they might have it in them. I feel like they might. I'm not saying that I would count them in to be Super Bowl contenders right now, but I feel like they might shock a few people and make it at least to the playoffs and maybe at least to the second round, if not to all the way to the championship. But it's just really one of those just watch and see kind of things. You don't want to really kind of hype something up too quickly and then watch it all kind of catch on fire and burn down. And then just kind of,
No, I don't think you're crazy for that pick. I don't want to say anything as well. I'm in agreement with you there. I'm not saying these guys are Super Bowl contenders or anything, but I will say, just from watching Caleb Williams in the preseason, Roma Dunze in the preseason, DeAndre Swift, the whole Bears offense and defense as a whole too, they have improved. Just from looking at last year, they have improved, and anybody that says they have not is crazy. Anybody that says they have not is crazy. They're 4-0 in the preseason, like you said. I know it's preseason. That doesn't mean anything. I know the Giants a few years back went like 4-0 in the preseason and then had like one of the career worst years ever. So it doesn't mean anything. But it is a sign of life, I will say. People were calling last year for Matt Eberflus, the head coach of the Bears, to be fired. Very opposite of hired. Halfway through the year last year, which, if you did not know this, the Bears have actually never done. They have never fired a coach mid-year, ever, in the history of the Chicago Bears. So, and I'm not sure if you guys have also seen this, Matt Eberflus kind of got a little makeover. He's got the beard, and now he kind of looks like, as one of my other assistant coaches that if you don't know anything about me, I coach a high school football team, so I have some other coaching friends that I talk football with quite a bit because I offensive line, defensive line coach over at my school that I currently teach at. But I talk football with my other assistant coaches, and one's a huge Bears fan, and he absolutely is like, Eberflus is a different guy. He's not the clean-shaven Eberflus anymore. He's like the veteran dad type of looking coach that looks like he could lead a team to something big. And like I said, I'm not saying these guys are Super Bowl contenders either, but they could definitely make some noise in the future. Matt, anything else you'd like to add before we move on to the AFC picks?
No, sir.
All right, perfect. Okay. Not perfect that you didn't have anything to add. It's okay. But okay. So moving on to my AFC picks, and I'll try and keep these a little shorter. I'm not sure what we're at time-wise. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on just like one big topic. I know this is kind of a bigger one compared to the college football reaction to week 0, but that's all right. But my AFC pick, and my buddy Jacob will definitely like this pick. Loves his Broncos. So the Denver Broncos is one of my sleeper picks for the AFC. They won 8 games last year. And if you don't remember very much about last season about the Denver Broncos, they kind of got hot right at the end of the year. They had Russell Wilson at the helm. Sean Payton, their head coach, and I hear this all the time. Anytime I bring up Russell Wilson to Jacob, he always tells me, he simplified that offense as much as he could for Russell Wilson, and it just did not. He could not run it. And Sean Payton, he's well on his way to the Hall of Fame whenever he's done. great coach for those Saints back in the day. Beat Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl back in, I believe the year was 09, might have been 08. I can't remember the exact year, but nonetheless, he beat Peyton Manning in the prime of his career with a great team. Had multiple playoff runs with the Saints whenever he was the coach there, and went into broadcasting a little bit. Now he's back as the Broncos head coach. But they, and if you don't know much about the Broncos either, they did draft Bo Nix, great quarterback at Oregon last season, had great run with them. In every game that I've seen him in the preseason, he's looked great. Throws are for the most part on target. He has a pretty good awareness of the pocket so far. He's not your I don't want to call him like a scrambler. He's not your typical guy that's gonna like take off every single play if it's a broken play. But he can tuck his head down and get a few yards if need be, But I'm thinking they may be possibly, and this is kind of my bold statement for the Broncos, they might be what C.J. Stroud was for the 2023 Texans. Nobody expected Stroud to pop off for the Texans last year in 2023. Nobody did. And he ended up being one of, if not, arguably the best rookie quarterback out of the entire draft. Yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on the Broncos right there. And I as much as I would love to say that I think that other teams are going to compete in that AFC West outside of the Chiefs, I don't think there's going to be anybody. You could maybe mix the Chargers in there too as a possible sleeper. I know Jim Harbaugh, he's won everywhere he's gone, but I don't feel like they have the tools quite yet to do it. So I really think this is the Denver Broncos' year to kind of make a splash.
I mean, yeah, I can definitely see that happening. I mean, they've got Sean Payton. It's like you said, they've got Bo Nix. I mean, that's definitely a step up of Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, oh man.
Yeah, definitely.
But, so really, I mean, it's going to be a challenge for Bo Nix. He's, a rookie starter in his first game.
Zach Wilson backing him up.
Yeah, Zach Wilson backing him up. His first game is going to be at Lumen Field against the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I saw that he was going to be starting, and all I could think of was, is he going to be able to handle it? Because I've heard a lot of former quarterbacks say that they hated playing in Seattle because it was so loud. They said you can feel the 12th man. That's why these fans will wear the number 12 on their back, the 12th man. So, I mean, I've seen some of his plays. I actually did watch some college football stuff last year whenever he was playing for Oregon. I thought he did pretty good. I haven't really paid much attention, though, to preseason, how he's been doing in the preseason. Let me see if I can't pull that up real quick.
I know his first game he had like 21 passes, and I think he went like 19 for 21.
Man.
And I'm pretty sure they're playing the Colts. That might be a mistake, but I remember specifically Jacob was showing me some highlights of Bo Nix, and I'm pretty sure it was against the Colts, and I'm almost positive he went like 19 for 21, had over like 100 yards passing, and I think he threw a touchdown. Should have threw a few more, but those receivers kind of dropped some passes that they should have had.
I watched their preseason game today, the last quarter of it. I liked the way they played. I didn't think Zach Wilson played too bad today. I don't know exactly what he threw. I didn't get to watch Bo Nix play, but they did very well on stopping Arizona from scoring at all. They got 12 over the game, but it just seemed like every other run they were stopping them before the 50-yard line, and I could see them doing very well if they can keep this up, and if Bo Nix can continue to play like he has.
Oh, certainly. I guess I'll move on to my my last AFC sleeper pick, and then I'm sure Caleb has his AFC picks, and we'll definitely hear his out. And then we'll kind of move on to our next topic, which would be the MLB umpire problem. But first, I'll introduce my last AFC sleeper pick. So this team, This one's kind of if I had to pick out of all the teams that I picked outside of the Arizona Cardinals to be a bold pick, this one's a bold pick. It's the Indianapolis Colts.
Oh, really bold.
Now, this is something that I didn't realize last year. And I don't know if you guys did either. Colts won 9 games. The Colts won 9 games last season. And this is nothing to take away from Gardner Minshew, but he was the one that was mainly playing quarterback. Anthony Richardson was supposed to be their starter, but he obviously had an injury. I think he can step up and be the leader he needs to be, because watching him play in college, he looked phenomenal. And I think that he can still, like I said, he had the injury last season. He was a rookie. I think that he's finally like saying, okay, this is my put up or shut up time. Like, because if they just wasted a pick on me because I was a quarterback that was good in college, which there's been many of those. Jamarcus Russell probably is the most famous out of all of them. But it's his put up or shut up time. And then also this team also improved their defense, which was a really weak point last season. But they focused on it this offseason. They re-signed DeForest Buckner to a 2-year deal. Cam McGrone at linebacker has been one of the highest rated. Matter of fact, I think he was their highest rated defensive player. I think he had like a rating of like 95 at linebacker this preseason. Zaire Franklin as well had a pretty high rating. Kenny Moore, Nick Cross at safety. Those guys have all had really good preseasons. And I think DeForest Buckner being re-signed to a 2-year deal really helps them up the middle, because they really, really struggled against the run, I think, especially towards the end of last year. But I think with him being re-signed, I think that kind of gives them a little bit of reassurance that this isn't going to be a bad year. And like I said, I think this team is still pretty good. I think this team is very underrated for the teams they play. Now, they do play in a very, very tough and competitive division. AFC South is no joke. I mean, they're going to be playing against the Texans. They're going to be playing against the Jaguars. And of course, all the other teams that they have to play along the way. But the Texans and Jaguars are the biggest threat. The Titans, they kind of had a disappointing year last season, but I still think that they can make a big splash, and that's just my opinion. If they can take at least one of those divisional games, like against the Jaguars, if not both, and then if they could take one against the Texans, look out. This team, I really do think that this team could be something special. Reactions to that?
I mean, yeah, definitely. It's a little bit of a tough call on that one. I mean, yes, they did improve, and I feel like Anthony Richardson has a lot to prove, especially since he really didn't get to have his first season because he got injured, and Minshew Mania was taken over.
I just think it's crazy they still won 9 games.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, I'm not gonna hate on that. I mean, winning 9 games with Minshew behind there, I mean, that's pretty impressive. I remember his days in Jacksonville, whenever he was just absolutely going on.
Pre Trevor Lawrence, man.
Everybody's like, "Oh my God, this guy's gonna be the next MVP," and then he just kind of got passed around.
Oh, Minshew Mania, the guy that could be mistaken for many bad actors, I should say. Many bad actors, let's put it that way.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like definitely I feel like the Colts could make some noise in the playoffs this year. But it's just going to be tough, especially in that AFC South division. I mean, because of how much noise the Texans made last year and everything. It's just going to depend on how everything shakes out, how the injuries shake out, and if, just they play the cards that they get dealt correctly. Time will tell, though. Time will tell.
Yep, 100%. Okay, similar picks to mine, or did you have some completely different ones?
I kind of had a little bit different, a little bit similar.
Okay.
I kind of falling in line with my last pick, like in the AFC. It's not really a huge sleeper because I feel like, they were real close last year too. I feel like the Ravens could make some noise and maybe make it to the Super Bowl this year.
Okay.
And my reasoning for that is because they have made some improvements. Especially picking up Derrick Henry. I mean, still have
man,
Lamar
that just
Jackson.
great rushing attack now. I mean, you've got your power, you've got your speed with Lamar, and people want to sleep on Henry and just say, "Oh, he's getting old. He's not very good anymore." Put him on the right team. Put him on the right team, which I think he's on the right team now. And I think because I mean, think of the impact he made when he was just with Tennessee. And that's not to take anything away. Sorry for you Titans fans in here. That's not to take anything away from like Tennessee. Because they made the playoffs a couple times. Matter of fact, they were the team, if I remember right, it was 2019 going into 2020. And I believe that was the Logan Ryan interception year, pick 6, where they ended their season. But they were a good team with him running the ball. But towards the end, you lost key guys. AJ Brown, prime example. I mean, when you lose your number one wide receiver and he goes to a team where he's not even a number one wide receiver on the Eagles, that's tough.
Oh yeah,
that's really tough to keep up with. I mean, really, he was their lone superstar. Derrick Henry was. Now he's back in that kind of that environment where he's not going to be like the number one guy. Kyler Murray. Lamar Jackson. Sorry, Kyler Murray's older brother, as I'd like to say. Lamar Jackson is, in my opinion, and this could also be kind of a hot take, I think he's the biggest dual threat quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
Biggest and best. You cannot, and I mean, I will state this right now, and then somebody wants to debate me in the comments, go right the heck ahead. All right. You cannot tell me any other quarterback in the NFL that can run like he can and pass like he can at the same time. I don't even want to hear anything about Pat Mahomes. Is Pat Mahomes a better overall passer? 100%. Can he run better than Lamar Jackson though? Absolutely not.
No,
I would take Lamar Jackson right now at the helm of a team that runs a very good, like, balanced offense of run and pass, like option plays. I would take him personally over Pat just because I mean, and you can just call me a big Lamar Jackson fan. I love Lamar Jackson. I love watching him play. But I'm not taking any credit away from Pat Mahomes at all. But, yeah. Sorry, I kind of went off on my own little tangent, but that's yeah. So the Ravens was one of your picks. Okay, who's your second?
I'd have to say my second, and they made a little bit of noise last year, and I feel like they've improved a little bit, and I feel like they can make a good run this year. I feel like the Texans can make a good run.
Definitely.
I mean, just kind of looking at their depth chart here. I mean, still got C.J. Stroud, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz. I mean, that's huge. Like, Mario Edwards Jr. on the defense. They just signed him, I believe. Desmond King, Jimmy Ward as free safety. It's just what they needed a lot more weapons. I mean, not saying they didn't have weapons for C.J. Stroud, but if you look at what they
were
gave
young
him now, I feel like he could really make a difference. I mean, the number one thing I feel like his defense depends on is if Stephon Diggs can keep his cool or not. I mean, because I know that there was that whole drama between him and Josh Allen.
Yeah, this is my own personal opinion, and this is not taking anything away from his playing ability, but there's some, and you'll definitely hear at least me. I'm sure Matt, whenever we get over to the MLB side of things, mainly. But there's definitely some guys I'm not huge people fans of. Stephon Diggs is not one of them. I'm not a huge Stephon Diggs fan. Not taking away anything from his playing ability, but if I had to put him compared to somebody, like I'll compare this for you, Matt. I mean, I know you probably heard Stephon Diggs. I'm sure you probably know who he is, but if I had to compare his personality to somebody like in the MLB, it'd almost be like Manny Machado.
Ooh.
He thinks he's the best player in the NFL, in my eyes. He thinks he's probably the best wide receiver in the NFL, which is very good. Don't get me wrong, but he's not the best. And he thinks it's almost like he knows he's good. He has that kind of mentality, and that can be good for players sometimes. It really can be, but I feel like more times than not, he had that one big moment in Minnesota against the Saints, which I'm sure you've seen in our intro clip multiple times. One of the greatest postseason moments in history for the Vikings. I will no doubt accept that. But outside of that, what has he really? I don't want to say he hasn't had any big moments, but like, I can't recall any. I can't really like recall any off the top of my head, and I'm sure like Vikings fans are probably like smacking me across the screen right now, like, oh, you insert bad name, you didn't see this play, or you didn't see that play, you didn't see this play, whatever. I'm sure you could probably find tons of things and prove break wrong. That's fine. But personally, I don't think he's that. I don't think he's all that. I really don't. Now, is he going to be a great weapon for CJ Stroud to have? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad that CJ Stroud finally has somebody outside of Collins and Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz to throw to. I think that's great. But overall, I think Stephon Diggs is just kind of like a big diva. He's like he's like probably the, if I had to say the diva of the divas in the NFL for wide receiver, he's probably number one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. I mean, it's just a big mess.
Yeah. Now, I'm sorry, Matt. I know you absolutely adore Manny Machado and like have a little stuffed Manny Machado doll and everything. You know, I'm sure that you love hearing that.
Oh, dude, he's my favorite. I just love it.
Yeah, but Matt, I think we all are kind of like not big Manny Machado fans in here, and sorry if you are a Manny Machado fan, but that's good player. But like I said, I compare him to Stephon Diggs in the NFL. That's um okay. I guess we'll move on to our next segment. So that would be this would be MLB's umpire problem. So Matt, I'm probably gonna let you go first. I felt like we kind of shut you out there for the NFL. I know, like I said, I know you haven't really watched too much of the NFL, so I kind of want to hear your take on it first. So MLB umpire problem. What do you think about the MLB umpire problem? Do you think it's like something that needs to be addressed? Do you think that there's a need for robot umps? Do you think that there is a worse umpire than Angel Hernandez right now?
Well, I think the MLB umpire problem has needed to be addressed for longer than just this year. It keeps getting worse every year, and if robo umps is what it needs to be, then we need to bring it on, because the amount of ego being put into these umpires thinking that they can run the game how they want to is not right. There are many guys who need to be fined for how poorly they call the game, and then I think there should be rewards for the guys who do call great games, because there are great umpires out there who call great games day in and day out, and they don't get recognized for it because of how many bad umpires there are. At this point, the bad outweighs the good, and the players are sick of it. I know, me personally, I've been sick of it, and I'm sure most fans out there can say they're tired of. A lot of times, umps can ruin a game for a team. One bad call can truly change the game, and it was nice to see Angel Hernandez out of MLB this year, but I think there are guys who are just stepping into his place as just as bad, if not becoming worse. Main one for me is CB Buckner. He's had issues. He's had issues with the Cardinals. There are multiple guys on a list I'm looking at right now that have had issues with the Cardinals, but he is a main issue. He is not good. Hunter Wendelstedt, he should be. I think he should be fined more than CB Buckner. Hunter Wendelstedt was the guy who tossed Yankees manager this year for something that a fan had said. He didn't take into account that the fan could have said it. He didn't attempt to ask why he said it. He just looked at him and said, "You're gone." And he pretty much said, "This is my game. I can do what I want." Nothing ever happened to him. And I think that's a really big issue. If they think they can just take the game into their hands when it's not about them. They're there to keep the integrity of the game together, and yet they are essentially ruining said integrity of the game single-handedly, one missed call at a time.
Great points. Definitely great points.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree with you mostly on most of those takes. Yeah, CB Buckner, definitely a in my eyes terrible umpire, and he is definitely pulling a lot of calls for the Cardinals. Which, even though I'm a Cub fan, I do think it's wrong. It seems like at this point he targets the Cardinals. I don't. Hunter Wendelstedt, I was just trying to think of his name. I think that he definitely needs to have some evaluations put on him about how bad of an umpire he is, for the fact that he did throw Aaron Boone out regarding that altercation that a fan said. I think that's terrible. But here is my take on it. And my dad actually asked this question to a former major league umpire whenever we were on a baseball trip years ago. So it was Al Clark was the major league umpire, and he managed in the AL for a very long time, called All-Star games, World Series games. So he was one of the better ones from what people talked about him. My dad brought up the case of robot umps, and he said, "Do you think that it would make the game better? Do you think that it would make the game worse? What's your take on it?" And he said, "Personally, I don't believe that this game needs robot umps, and here's my reason why. If you can have robot umpires call the game for you, you might as well just have robots come up and hit for you." And I kind of took that into consideration. And it made me think, well, that doesn't make any sense. Just have a robotic strike zone. But at the same time, it kind of does make a little bit of sense. You might as well just call up prototype number 1 to go hit a home run for you and program it. Could that be the future of this game? I don't really see it. And I know they've had that robotic strike zone down in like the minor leagues, and from what I've heard, it's worked pretty well. But I just feel like this game just changes more and more every single year. The addition of the pitch clock. And then they're talking about putting an innings limit on pitchers, but I think that is a dumb idea, about having to make them go a minimum of 6 innings. I think that is just ridiculous. I know that there's some stipulations to that rule where it's like if there's an injury, they can come out. If they've given up so many runs, they can come out. But it's just like that. It takes the strategy out. And then I also don't like the rule of how it's like you have to face a minimum of 3 batters. I think that also took the strategy out of the game. There was I talked to Matt about this game a lot. There was a game back, I believe it was in 2017, is whenever John Lester hit a walk-off hit against the Seattle Mariners. But Travis Wood, in that game, who was known to be a spot starter / relief pitcher, he actually went out and he played left field for us so he could stay in the game. And he actually caught a ball right up against the brick wall in Wrigley Field. Got a standing ovation for it too, because I mean, goodness gracious, he's a relief pitcher. You threw him out in left field. You don't expect him to catch a ball like that, but he did. And I just, like I said, I just feel like it kind of, the more rules and more things that we add to the game, I feel like it just kind of takes the element of baseball away from it. Now, as far as the umpire problem, 100% there's one, and I do agree that there needs to be evaluations on these guys. And I think that if their strike/ball rating percentage being correct is below a certain percentage, absolutely send them down to the minor leagues. Send them down to the if it's like a consistent thing, like over, let's say over a month span, they had like 5 games of where their ball and strike zone rate percentage of having wrong calls was over like 15 or 20% of the game. Yeah, send them down. Send them down to AAA till you can prove yourself that you can call a major league game correctly. You're stuck in the minor leagues. Play it as a system as like a GM of a team would do. You know, calling up players from AAA, sending people down for not performing very well. You know, I could definitely get behind something like that. I also think that there should be a evaluation sheet, which I'm sure that there probably is, from manager to manager of umpires, but at the same time, if that's all there is, it obviously didn't work. It took Angel Hernandez how many years to retire? A ton.
Way too many.
Way too many. But that's just my take on it. Like I said, I don't think that we need robot umpires, but I definitely think we do need a better evaluation system. And like I said, people can debate me on that. Matt, you could debate me on it. I'm all for it. But yeah, I will always stand behind what Al Clark said. You might as well just have robots come up and hit for you.
And I agree with that. The umpire evaluations need to happen sooner than later because it's just getting out of hand by the day. But I think another thing that needs to be fixed to go along with that is the replay system, because there are times when a team will challenge it. All the replays they show the fans could show the complete opposite of what the ump called, and they still will go with what the ump said. And that just cannot be. If you have the technology somewhere to review it, you need to get it correct every time. If you've got to have 40 different people looking at 40 different camera angles, do it. But when something is replayed, it needs to be perfect. And I think something that should be implemented, I don't know what part of the minor league it begins in, but a player, I don't know how many they get a game. I haven't looked into it. I've just seen how well it has worked, that a player can challenge a ball or strike call.
Yeah, challenge the ball or strike call. I've seen that.
By just tapping their head.
Rookie ball.
And if we can implement that, implement it. And obviously, a pitcher can throw however many pitchers you have are going to throw more than 100 pitches a game. So there's got to be a limit on how many, challenges they get. But I think if you can do 3 or 4 of those per game, it would help with the amount of bad calls that are given. Now, it's not going to completely fix the situation until the umpire evaluations are there, but it would at least be a good start.
Yeah, definitely. Caleb, you've got your take, especially on the umpire problem. I'm sure there's stuff we probably already said that you would want to cover, but what's your opinion?
I mean, I definitely agree with a lot of things you said. I mean, I never would have thought to look at it that way, that if we put in robot umps, just put in robot batters. But yeah, I mean, if you can go and look at like the umpire scorecards and you can see there's just a consistent who's doing better than others. I mean, you can look at the lowest and you can see like Laz Diaz, CB Buckner, and it's just always the same guys are at the bottom, and it's ridiculous that those guys are still allowed to be behind home plate in the league. And it's just like what was said with Angel Hernandez. He was allowed to be in the league for so long, and there was that game in the playoffs that he had like 12 calls overturned in, I don't even know how many innings it was, maybe 2 or 3. because he just could not make a solid call to save his life, and he wasn't even behind the plate. He was at first.
Right.
So that's just basically my thing with it. But at the same time, I feel like, I wouldn't say get rid of umpires as a whole. I would more or less just say let there be some sort of way we can challenge these bad calls, and give them just a limit. Don't let them challenge every single call, because then they're just going to challenge every call. I think you got it wrong, so I'm going to challenge it. No, make them use it wisely at least. And then having evaluations, making them actually look and check on how these umpires are doing, using these scorecards that are available to everybody. If you use those, or if MLB wants to use their own system to evaluate the umpires, they need to start looking into that, because some of these umpires that get behind the plate, obviously, some days they just don't have any clue as to what they're doing. I know that might add a element of, what's the word for it? Might add an element of strategy. That's what I was thinking of. But at the same time, there's just a fine line between adding strategy and being a bad umpire.
We can move on to that wheel of nostalgia that we've definitely been looking forward to. So this was technically my idea. So I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen so everybody can see it. Let me know if you can see it, Caleb. So as Caleb's working on that and getting the recording to fit and everything, this is the wheel of nostalgia. So how this works, as I'm sure you see some of these names off to not only the right, but also in the wheel itself, you have all of these are former players, and they are some are for our teams, some are not, some are just players we get nostalgic about. So for instance, if it were to land on, let's say it landed on Prince Fielder, he never played for, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he played for any of our teams, correct? On the Cubs. Well, he definitely didn't play for the Cubs, didn't play for the Cardinals, and then I'm pretty sure he didn't play for the Royals. Am I right, Caleb?
No, he never played for Kansas City.
Okay, I didn't think so.
It was Milwaukee and Texas.
Milwaukee and Texas is what I thought. And Detroit, yep, yeah.
Oh, yes, correct.
Obviously, he never played for any of our teams. So how this would work, we'll spin the wheel. Whomever it lands on, we obviously talk about just small things we might remember about him. They could be the absolute most irrelevant person in the entire MLB. They don't have to be a former MVP. They don't have to be an all-star. They don't have to be a World Series champion. They don't have to be anything. They could just be somebody you remember. Same with the NFL. I think that's what makes this really fun. And what we might do in the future is we might have some comments, and we might allow you to put in some people. And if we remember them pretty well, or at least one of us does, we can put them in and spin them around, and we can talk about them. So, for instance, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spin this wheel. Whomever it lands on, if it's your player, go ahead and start first, and then the rest of us can kind of talk. I know there's only two NFL players on here right now, but we'll work on adding some more. And also, before we go ahead and spin, how this will work, obviously the person's name that gets picked tonight, they will be gone, and we won't talk about them. I don't want to say ever again, but we won't talk about them on the Wheel of Nostalgia ever again. But the rest of them that have not been picked, they will go through until everybody gets their player picked. Once that's done over with, we'll enter in a new set. So technically, we will not have a new set of players until, let's see, that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 podcasts from now, technically. So, okay, without further ado, I know that took a little bit to explain.
It's all right, though.
We will go ahead and we will spin to get our first player. So here we go.
It's going to be...
And without further ado, it is Prince Fielder. So, Matt, this is actually your selection. We got a little applause here and everything for it.
Oh, thank you.
So Prince Fielder was Matt's pick. So I will let him go ahead and just kind of I mean, you can highlight whatever you want to talk about Prince. I mean, I've definitely got some things I definitely want to say about him, about player himself and how good he was and everything. But I will let you start since you technically put him in. So go without further ado. Go ahead, Matt.
I chose Prince just because I remember when I first started watching how good he was. He was a beast, and unfortunately, injuries became too much and inevitably ended his career. But he was just a guy you didn't want to face in the batter's box because he could hit about anything. I mean, he had the power. Uh, I mean, big man could run too. If you really
Oh yeah.
wanted him to, he could turn on them
Oh yeah.
jets. And I just feel like he was one of those guys you would just want in the clubhouse because his personality was amazing. He's a great overall guy. He was loved by many, and I wish we could have watched him more because I think he would have his career would have been so much more than what it was had he not got injured. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely. I guess I'll go next about Prince. A lot of good points. Definitely agree with what Matt said. Great overall player. Great, just a great guy. And that speech that he gave after he had to retire. I mean, that almost gets me choked up a little bit. That's tough to watch. You know, especially I'm sure like how his dad. I mean, if you don't know anything much about Prince Fielder, I mean his dad played in the MLB as well. Cecil Fielder played for the Tigers and Yankees at one point in time. A couple other teams, I'm sure, but those are the main ones that he played for. I can't imagine like his dad's shoes watching his own son who had many years left in his career to go. Because I mean, at that point in time, he was probably what age? Probably like just hitting 30, maybe 31 at that point in time when that happened. May have been a
let's
little.
see
He
here.
may have been a little bit older. Matt will probably get that age. I'm sure I messed up, but
Whenever he retired.
He's 40 currently,
so yeah,
and
he
his
definitely was
last
young.
season was 16. So
Was
that
16, so that's
that
almost
was
10
eight
years ago.
years.
Yeah, he
So
was
So
he
yeah,
was only
32.
32.
32. So yeah, about the right age. So yeah, 32 years old. Plenty of years left to go in his career. He would have probably played to at least 35, bare minimum. Bare minimum, probably 35. But like I said, I mean that video that of him that he released of his retirement just absolutely tough to watch. I can't imagine what his dad was thinking whenever that played through. But to kind of bring this up and kind of made it a little depressing there, but to kind of bring this up a little bit more about Prince, you know, um, one of the one of the infamous things I always remember about him was the fact that anytime that he would ever like make a play that like was kind of involving around fans, he would like there's always those clips of him reaching in those people's nachos and like dipping them in the cheese and taking a bite. I always I always enjoyed watching those anytime that would come up. And then also one of my favorite clips is the I can't remember who hit the hit, but Prince was on base and he was with the Brewers, and I mean, he had to sprint. Or no, matter of fact, it was Prince himself. It was his inside the park home run. It was his inside the park home run that I'm talking about. I mean, he had to sprint as hard as he could, and he's a big guy. Um, but just all the heart that he had to just that he played with. I mean, it just made him an amazing player. And I definitely think that he had a lot more years left in him. And I guess I'll leave it with a fun fact. If you didn't know this already, he has the same exact, to the number, the same exact career home runs as his dad.
Oh man, that's
Same
impressive.
exact. Yep. Yeah, that's something that I thought was always kind of cool about him. But that's my take on Prince. I didn't really get to watch too much of him because, like I said, I started watching in 2013, but I knew he was a good player. That was like right around his, I would say, probably about his later prime years. But I knew he was a great player, special talent. Yeah, that's my take on Prince Fielder. Caleb, you got anything on him?
Yeah, I mean Prince was special, man. I mean, if you think about it, from 2009 to 2013, he was one game away from playing 5 consecutive seasons without missing a game. He missed one game in
That's
2010.
extraordinary.
Yeah, and it's just a shame, man. I mean, injuries just kept him down. I feel like it's like we were saying, if the injuries wouldn't have gotten to him, more than likely he probably would have played until he was 35, and his stat sheet would have been, I'd say, he probably would have hit at least 500, maybe close to 600 home runs in his career. I mean, he was only 32 and he was on a roll. I mean, it's just unfortunate. I mean, he had 50 home runs in 2007.
Yeah.
It's just it's tough, man. I mean, I feel like he would have been a great player. I mean, he is a great player. Don't get me wrong. I just feel like it's just very unfortunate. I feel like we'll never truly know what he could have been if it weren't for the injuries.
Definitely. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a wrap on Prince Fielder. To kind of go off your point, I don't know if he would have exactly hit around 500 home runs because, like I said, he ended with about 319, I believe. But I definitely could have seen him getting to 400, and I think that would have boosted his Hall of Fame percentage a little bit more. Do I see him getting into the Hall possibly in the future? That's such a tough call to make, but I don't think so. I think that the only way that he gets in is if he were like voted in by the Veterans Committee, and even then, I don't know if he would make it in. Like I said, but still great player, good person to mention. So great pick, Matt. I love that you put him in here. So like I'll go ahead and restate the rules once again. So we're gonna go ahead and remove Prince Fielder, so he is off the list now. So now obviously we have Eli Manning, Addison Russell, Oscar Taveras, Whit Merrifield, and Bobby Wagner left. So next time we do this podcast, these players will be in. I'll spin the wheel. Whomever it lands on, that's who we'll discuss. And yeah, so that is the Wheel of Nostalgia. Pretty simple. Okay, so we will go ahead and we will move on to our next, I guess our second to last topic, which is championship droughts. So, I guess how we can kind of start this off. So we're gonna do the NFL and the MLB. I was just gonna kind of list them. So I have all the lists right here of the biggest droughts. Some have years, some don't, because just depending upon when they won. Like if there's a team that did not win, they have no championships. But so I'll go ahead and I'll start with the NFL. So as of now, the biggest drought that I saw when I looked this up, and like I said, there may be a correction, but they're definitely one of the bigger droughts, I would say. The Arizona Cardinals is number one. The last time they won was 1947, and if you need any more clarification on that, that was 2 years after World War II had ended.
Man.
So, pretty long time ago for them. Next up on the list, Detroit Lions. Last time they won was 1957. So, if for some more clarification, President Kennedy was still alive. That's one of the things. I guess he wasn't in office yet. It would have been Eisenhower at that time, but pretty long time ago for them as well. Minnesota Vikings, although they had went to multiple championships, they have none, so they have one of the longer droughts. The Tennessee Titans, the last time they won, they were not even the Tennessee Titans. They were the Oilers of Houston in 1961. Then there was the San Diego Chargers. Last time they won was 1963. The Browns was 1964. The Bills, which also had very bad luck, especially in the 90s, going to 4 straight, losing all 4. The last time they won was 1965. And then, of course, the Atlanta Falcons with the infamous 28-3 in the third quarter from the Patriots. That was a very heartbreaking loss for them in the Super Bowl. But they also as well have no championships, and they've had a pretty big drought for a while. And then as well as the Bengals, they have no championships. So general reactions about any of those for like how long it's been for a few of those teams.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah, pretty
For a
mind-boggling. I agree.
I mean, not having won anything since after World War II ended, that's got to be hard. I mean, to maybe not too hard, but I feel like it'd be a little hard to play for a team knowing that they haven't won in that long. I mean, that's a long time, considering that was even before the first Super Bowl happened. That was before they
Yes.
even called it the Super Bowl. So
Mhm.
that's something else that's mind-boggling too about a couple of those teams, and one having a name change in those years too. The Texans,
Yes.
last time they won, they were the Oilers, not the Texans.
Titans. Tennessee
Titans.
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 I know what you meant though. But
Goodness. Yeah,
yes.
close enough.
Yeah. But yes. Yeah, I definitely agree with those. Definitely mind-boggling. And I think it's also crazy to think that like what you said, Matt, some of those teams won before it was even the Super. Like matter of fact, all these teams that I said that had won, they won before it was even called the Super Bowl. The first Super Bowl was in 1967 between the Packers and the Chiefs. The person that, or sorry, I said not the person, the team that was closest to winning it around the first time it was actually called the Super Bowl was the Bills in 1965. That's unreal for how long it's been. Caleb, any other reactions that didn't hear from Matt already?
I mean, yeah, it's just mind-boggling. It's especially tough because some of these teams, I mean, they've been right there. I mean, like look at Cincinnati, look at Atlanta. They were right there.
Definitely.
Arizona, didn't they make it to a Super Bowl, or am I just
Yes,
cute?
yes. That was 2008. That was the James Harrison interception return. The
Mm.
one of the best interception returns in the history of the history of the NFL. Really, I mean, guy was almost a 270-pound linebacker back there. Dude mainly was just a run stopper, but he picked the ball off and he ran it. I want to say it was like over 90 yards all the way back for a touchdown. And that was back whenever they had Kurt Warner at their quarterback in about 2008. And that was like Larry Fitzgerald's prime around that time. So yeah, they had a good team, but they were right there, didn't win it. Um,
Yeah,
so I
man.
guess now we'll move on from the I don't want to say move on from the NFL, but like move on from the drought. Who do you think out of the teams that I listed, and if you need me to list them again, so it's the Cardinals, the Lions, the Vikings, the Titans, the Chargers, the Browns, the Bills, the Falcons, and the Bengals. Who do you think out of those teams that have a drought are in the running for a championship the quickest? If I had to pick one, personally, it's the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Out of all those, it's the Lions, without a doubt.
I'd say Lions, and then probably a close second would probably be either the Bengals or the Bills.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
those are probably those are probably like my top three. I'd say Detroit. I mean, my goodness, you stated it earlier in the podcast, Caleb. They were goodness great. They had the lead at one point in the NFC Championship game. They were
Yeah,
right
ESPN
there to
had them
making it
ranked,
back.
had them at 90% chance to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody thought last year was their year, so they definitely have they definitely have the team to do it. They definitely have the coach to do it. Like I said, I love me some Dan Campbell. But
The
I
power
think
of
that
friendship.
yeah, power of friendship. They've got it. I mean, they're right there now. Will they have a repeat season of last year, making it all the way to the NFC Championship game? Time will tell. But I definitely think that they are looking to hopefully repeat and more from last year.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I feel like that it's like Matt said earlier whenever we were talking about the Lions, that getting that close and just losing by 3 points has to awaken some sort of hunger. They got that taste for blood now, and now they're really wanting to get the ball rolling and see, you know, that they could make it. They can do it. It's just it's going to be a long road, and I feel like they've had a lot of time to stew on it, and this might be the time that they're the cards are going to play to their hand just right, and they're going to be able to make it.
Definitely. Okay, if there's nothing else left to say for the NFL, I guess we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the MLB for droughts, and we'll kind of do the same kind of format. We'll discuss. I'll tell you the droughts as far as research goes, and then we'll do our like top 3 picks and who we think might do it this year, or whatnot. So I guess starting off with the droughts. Thank goodness the Cubs are not on there anymore. They did, and still do have the longest championship drought. It was from 1908 to 2016, of course, when the Cubs did finally win it all. But 108-year drought, very, very long time before Chicago tasted a championship. Matter of fact, it was a long time before they even made the World Series. Again, 1945 was the time that the last time that they had made it to a World Series. But like I said, luckily we are not on that list anymore. However, the team that we did play in that said World Series in 2016 is on this list, and they're number 1 for the longest drought in MLB history. Their last title was in 1948. The Cleveland Guardians was.
Jesus.
So that is that is quite a while for Cleveland. Next up is the Brewers. Does not state the last time they made it to the World Series. If I were to guess, it probably would have been in '82 when they lost to the Cardinals in Game 7, which I feel bad for, especially like Ted Simmons on that team, because he literally played for the Cardinals up until that year, until he got traded to the Brewers, and then lost to the Cardinals, ironically, in the World Series the next year. So feel bad for that guy. Main reason why I know that, I actually got to meet Ted Simmons. It was kind of a fun thing to do. Met him and Mark Grace a couple years back. But anyways, I'm tangenting on. I gotta keep going. So Brewers, no championships. Below them is the Padres as well, no championships. I believe the last time they were in a World Series was '98 when Tony Gwynn was still playing. 98 or 99, somewhere around there. It was against the Yankees. They didn't do very well. They got swept, I think, or like 4-1, somewhere around there, I think. Mariners, no championships. I don't even think they've ever been to a World Series. Then it kind of gets a little bit closer. So I mean, I would still consider these droughts, but it's not as bad as per se the NFL. So then it goes down to the Pirates. Their last title was in 1979. Orioles last title was 83. Tigers last title was 84. Mets last title was 86. And then the A's, and their last title was in 89. So general reactions to that.
I mean, I think we can mathematically just go ahead and assume that the A's are probably not very close to being able to break their streak.
Yeah, I figured I would go ahead and just put them in there for the sake of them having a quote-unquote drought. I mean, it's crazy to say 1989 is super far away from 2024, but at the same time, it's not as far as, like, per se, like what the Arizona Cardinals have with the drought, 1947. But at the same time, you know, it's a drought nonetheless. But yeah, they definitely are, I'd say, statistically not going to be getting to a World Series and winning anytime soon. But time will tell, I guess, when they move over to Sacramento and then eventually Las Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all I know is that those A's fans, I mean, they're still going to be beating on that well, but unfortunately it's still dried up.
Yeah, it's definitely a sad time in Oakland, but especially for all their sports. But
yeah.
I guess as far as like if I were to go ahead and pick the team, or teams, I should say, that might be on this list alone that might be able to break that drought, I think the Guardians have a good shot of possibly doing it this year. Then the Orioles, I think, definitely have a good shot of doing it this year. I'd say the rest out of that list, I mean, goodness gracious, it's like a lot of those teams, it's just like like the Brewers. I keep looking at like the Brewers, the Padres, the Mariners, the Pirates. Well, not I shouldn't say the Pirates, but mainly the Brewers, Padres, and Mariners. Like they are teams that like consistently, as of late anyway, have made the postseason, and then they just like they lose all the momentum. They can't get the job done, or they run into a powerhouse like the Dodgers, or on the AL side of things, the Astros, and they can't. They just cannot get it done. They don't have the staffs to do it. It just seems like it doesn't matter what kind of talent they draft. It doesn't matter what kind of pitching staff they acquire through the trade deadline. They just can't seem to finish the job. And it's like it almost raises the question, is it ownership? Do you think that they're holding back a little bit? Is it just there's too many acquisitions going on towards the end of like the midway point of the year with the trade deadline? Like, is there like it's almost like what's going on? But you could say the same thing for the Guardians as well. It's like their last title was in 1948. Last time they made it, of course, was 2016 when they were still known as the Cleveland Indians. Hopefully, I don't offend anybody by that, but that's their former team name. But you know, the Cleveland Indians, they made it. They made it in 2016. Took the Cubs all the way to a Game 7. There for a while, I thought that the Indians were definitely going to just win this World Series, but Cubs kind of willed their way back in, and of course, some will say the rain delay was the only reason we won, which you could fight that battle all you want, but who knows? We'll never know what'll happen because we can't control weather. But regardless, it's like these teams, they get there and they just can't finish the job, and it's tough to see.
Yeah, I think. Oh,
Go ahead. Sorry.
the Brewers, they have the team. They have had the team, and I don't know what it is with them, and not that they just seem to lose all momentum come the postseason. And they do good regular season. I mean, as we see now, they've got an 11-game lead on every other team in the Central Division, and I think they get the teams that are just better. Like they'll get LA. LA is. I hate them for just buying everything. It reminds me of the Yankees, but they just have they just have good players and they just put it together. They have the teamwork to do it. And then I know you said the Mariners. I don't know what it is with them. They had a great team in 01 when especially when they set the record. Well, not set the record. They set the American League record for most wins in a season with 116, and then they couldn't get it done. And then it wasn't until 2022 when they finally made it back. So they've had the players. I mean, they had Griffey, A-Rod, Prime Ichiro. Maybe it was the pitching. I don't know. But I do agree with you that I think Cleveland and Baltimore are the two big teams on the drought list that have the best chance out of every other team that was named to break that drought.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. They're the two teams to do it. Really, they have the most talented rosters, I believe, right now out of the drought list. I mean, Pirates here in like 3 years, they might be able to do it with Skeens, Jones at their pitching staff. They have Henry Davis at catcher. They've got a couple other young guys in their farm system. Who knows? They could be O'Neill Cruz. That's another one that I forgot to name. They could bring a championship to that city for the first time since 1979. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to be this year. You know, it may take some time for them to get developed. But yeah. So is that everything we have to add on that? Caleb, you got any last few things for the droughts and who we think?
I mean, I definitely think that as much as it pains me to say it as a Royals fan, I feel like the Guardians have the biggest shot to break their drought. They've got all the momentum and everything, and it's just pulling them forward. But at the same time, I also feel like it's just kind of a big toss up. I feel like everybody's sleeping on Baltimore a little bit. I know that just feel like Baltimore doesn't really get talked about very much, and they're one of those teams that I feel like they're really going to make some noise, and they could probably go. I could see them breaking their drought this year. It's either going to be Cleveland or it's going to be Baltimore, I feel like. And I feel like it might be them too in the ALCS to determine who goes to the World Series. But time will for sure tell exactly what's going to happen. You know, some things might shake out a little bit different. You never know, but time will tell for sure.
Yep. Okay, and then the final piece of our podcast tonight. I know we've been keeping all our listeners for quite a while, and I am grateful that if you're still with us, that you've listened to everything we've said, tangents and all and everything. But
Absolutely.
the MLB Hall of Fame snubs and like what I would like to call the restricted list. So this is actually, I'll shout out my dad for this one. This was kind of more of his idea. He also kind of came up with the droughts list and who we think might come up and win next for both the NFL and the MLB. But yeah, he came up with this one today on our ride back home from Rockford. He says, I think that'd be a really good topic to discuss. And I'm kind of in agreement. So I wrote some guys down. I'm definitely not going to discuss every single person, but I think I'd like to discuss 2 hitters and 2 pitchers, in my opinion, that I really, really think should be in the Hall of Fame. And I'll probably do ones that I think are. I'll try and do one that's a snub, a Hall of Fame snub, like somebody that didn't necessarily do anything terrible across their career, but they just aren't in, or they should be in. And then I'll probably try and do one from the restricted list, like one that I think, maybe baseball needs to kind of just lighten up a little bit, forgive them. But I'll start. I guess I'll start off with my 4 guys. I'll try and make it short and sweet for most of them, but I do, like I said, like to go on tangents. But my first one, and I think that quite a bit of overall baseball fans can agree, at least in my opinion. I know that he did not do the game correctly after he was done as a player. But I think while playing this certain guy, I mean, personally, I don't think he did anything wrong. I mean, he's credited for literally quoting himself that he would walk through hell in a gasoline suit to play baseball. And if you don't know who that is, that's Pete Rose. I mean, the career statistic numbers are there. I put his baseball reference page in just so I can discuss a little bit about him. I mean, career hits leader, not even close. 4,256 hits all time. 303 batting average all time. Has over 1,000 RBIs in his career. MVP, Rookie of the Year, 17-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champ, 2-time Gold Glover, Silver Slugger, World Series MVP, 3-time batting title. Played multiple different positions, outfield, first base, and third base. Switch hitter, right-handed. Part of arguably probably one of the best teams in the 70s with the Big Red Machine, headlined by not only himself, but also Johnny Bench, Dave Concepcion, Ken Griffey Sr. Sure, I'm missing a ton of other people, but those are some of the guys. George Foster, that's another one. Just some of the guys off the top of my head. But the numbers are there for Pete. The numbers are absolutely there. And I think, and this is just me, I think personally it is absolutely stupid, the fact that in the world that we live in today, where gambling is such a prevalent part of sports, that you ban a guy from the Hall of Fame. You ban a guy from the Hall of Fame for doing that. I think that is absolutely stupid. I will fight anybody all day on that. Because you were telling me you're not going to let the all-time hits leader inside the MLB Hall of Fame, where it should be glorified. Not to mention there are murals of him in the Hall of Fame, getting his final hit to beat out Ty Cobb for 42-56. Or excuse me, whatever Ty Cobb's number was. It wasn't 42-56, but it was whatever the number was beforehand. I'm sure we'll find it. But there's murals of him beating it out there in the Hall of Fame. You're going to put all that in there, all those artifacts from Pete Rose's career, but you're not going to let him in himself. I think that's wrong. That's me personally.
I agree. I mean, I feel like it's pretty. If you're gonna memorialize him by putting him in the Hall of Fame, by letting him have all these like his jerseys and stuff like that, sitting in the Hall of Fame, and not let him be in there, it's just pretty disrespectful, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I have to say mainly on Pete Rose. Sorry, I tried to keep that short and sweet. I know it was kind of a argumentative stance. Matt, I know we kind of talked a little bit on him earlier. Do you have any more points that I kind of missed or anything?
No, not really. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. The man who completely shattered the record for most hits in a career. It's something I truthfully don't think will ever be broken. In our lifetime anyway. It's going to take quite the player to do that. But if you're going to allow sports betting, and this is across all sports, if you're going to allow it, do not ban someone from the Hall of Fame because they made one little mistake. I mean, because you're never going to see another guy like Pete Rose. And like you said, if you're going to put his stuff in the Hall of Fame, let him be in it, because the stuff you've put in there of his symbolizes what he did over his career, and that's got to be pretty. I bet that goes through Pete's mind every day. Like, oh, they've got all this stuff in there of me, but they won't let me in there.
Guarantee it. Okay, so that was my first guy that's kind of on the restricted list. Now, person that I personally think is a Hall of Fame snub. And you can say what you want. Sure, he may have played a little bit in the steroid era. You might be able to try and possibly link him to steroids, but I think this other hitter was also in the. I mean, he played on amazing teams, especially those late '90s Braves teams with Maddox, Schmaltz, and Glavine headlining the pitching side of things. But also there was McGriff, there was Chipper Jones. But I think there's another Jones that's also important that needs talked about more often, as Andrew Jones.
Ooh.
Andrew Jones, I think, is a Hall of Fame snub. Here's my reasoning behind it. So here, I've got his career numbers pulled up as we speak. Just under 2,000 hits for his career. He had 1,933 exactly. 434 home runs. Batting average, yes, was a little bit low. 254. However, his other stats to back him up: 1,289 RBIs, stole some bases earlier in his career. He had 152 total. His on-base percentage about 337. Some of his accolades: he was a 5-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glover, so great defensive player. He won a Silver Slugger, and he was a Major League Player of the Year award. Was runner-up for MVP in 2005. Got beat out by arguably the greatest first baseman of all time, Albert Pujols, in the National League. So all credit goes towards him for that. But Andrew Jones could have arguably won that award as well. But my case for Andrew Jones, kind of already stated it. He played for some great teams. He has some stats to do it. And this is no offense to Matt or any other Cardinal fan out there, but personally, if you're going to let a guy like Scott Rowland in before you let in Andrew Jones, I think that needs to be stated. Because looking at Rowland's stats real quickly, he's Rookie of the Year, 7-time All-Star, one-time World Series champ, 8-time Gold Glover, Silver Slugger, barely has more hits than he does. Well, I shouldn't say barely. I guess he does have 100 some odd more. But Jones has more home runs. Roland barely has more runs scored. Jones barely has a little bit more RBIs. Jones has more stolen bases. Yeah, they're very similar players in terms of statistics and Gold Gloves, accolades, whatever you want to call it. They're very similar in statistics. You could very well make the case that Andrew Jones needs to be a Hall of Famer. And I think that he is one that technically played the game the right way. I really don't think he was linked to steroids. And if he was, for whatever reason in his career, I don't personally think it's true. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely made a lot of good points there. I mean, I personally don't believe that Andrew Jones was one of this. I mean, there's a possibility, but we won't ever really know. I mean, we obviously know who the big hitters were during that steroid era, but I feel as though he was probably clean. He was one of those guys that just showed up and didn't feel like he needed anything extra to prove that he was a good ball player. He just wanted to
go out there and play ball.
He just want to go out there and play. You know, why would he want to tarnish his image with PEDs? Especially because he's taking a chance on himself. If that comes out that he's using PEDs, then that's a huge hit to his reputation as a player, and it makes all of his stats look as though they're nothing.
Yep. Any other things you'd like to add, Matt?
Not that I could think of. I mean, I agree with everything. Like you said, he was that guy that just went out there and played ball to the best of his ability, and he did it greatly. And as much as I loved Roland, I was honestly surprised that he got in. I feel like a guy like Andrew deserves it a little bit more than him. But sadly, that's not up for us as fans to decide, as it is the writers. But I feel like at some point, I feel like they need to let us fans have some sort of say in it.
I mean, you could also, sorry to cut you off, but you could also kind of make the case for like Mark Grace almost with Scott Rowland as well. Like, I know that he doesn't have like the homer numbers that he did, but something that you may not know, I think I've told Matt this before, and I actually got to meet Mark Grace. I stated that earlier in the video with Ted Simmons. That was kind of a fun experience, but he actually led the entire 1990s in hits. The entire 1990s out of every single hitter. That includes Barry Bonds, that includes Andrew Jones, that includes A-Rod, that includes McGuire, Sosa, whomever you want to throw out there. He led the entire MLB in the 90s in hits.
That's crazy.
And he is not in the Hall.
Man, I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough call. It really is, because like I said, he definitely doesn't have like the homer numbers. He only had 173 in his career, but it's definitely something to kind of ponder about. But sorry again, Matt. You can continue with your thought. Go ahead. You were talking about Roland and whatnot.
No, that was about it. Just that I was surprised that he got in, and that if he can get in, then a guy like Andrew Jones absolutely deserves to be in there as well.
Yep, for sure. I guess I'll go to my pitchers now. So I didn't have very many pitchers as I did hitters, but So I'll go ahead and I'll highlight one that I definitely didn't really know. I don't want to say I didn't know too much about him, but once again I started watching baseball in 2013. This guy quit playing beforehand, before I started watching, but I knew he was a big part of the Diamondback squad in 2001 and the Boston squad in 04. And I know that he's been linked to possible steroid use in the past. But one guy that could possibly be in the Hall, that I believe he'd probably be considered to be on the restricted list just due to his link to steroids, is Kurt Schilling. Um, so some of his stats that I'll bring up: he won 216 games, lost 146, so not a great win-loss record. But however, towards the beginning of his career, he didn't really start out pitching too many innings, it looks like, for Baltimore or even with Houston. Oh, well, I guess he started kind of jumping up, but he really didn't start pitching more than like 100 innings throughout the year until about his fourth year in the league, whenever he first started out with Philadelphia. So it kind of took him a little bit to kind of get started. So some of those losses might be a little bit credited just because of his like relief appearances possibly and whatnot. But moving on, his career ERA is 3.46. He compiled over 3,000 innings in his career, and he had over 3,000 strikeouts. Six-time All-Star, three-time World Series. One was definitely notable with the Diamondbacks in 2001. Him and Randy Johnson were the 1-2 punch that team needed. World Series MVP that year, and NLCS MVP as well. Really, I mean, I think the stats are there. It's tough to call, especially with pitchers that are linked to steroids. I mean, you can almost make the same like claim for like Roger Clemens almost. It's just, I know that Roger Clemens is more of like a blatant one, and Schilling, you could argue, is kind of more of a blatant one too, that like definitely used roids towards the end of his career. Because I mean, you look at the numbers, like the most games he had won prior to 2001 was 17 in 1997 with Philadelphia, in which that year he was an All-Star. But then in 2001 he pops off with 22 wins at age 34, and then at age 37 with Boston he wins 21 games. And then same thing in 02, even with Arizona, he won 23 games. So you can see the evidence there that there was possible steroid use towards the end of his career. Like I said, it's like the same thing with Clemens. Clemens in 97 with Toronto had 21 wins. In 98 with Toronto had 20. Whereas he wasn't winning that many games in his career beforehand, besides with Boston. So it's a tough thing to call, especially I feel like it's way harder with pitchers to kind of judge that. But you guys want to weigh in on that a little bit?
I mean, I'd say, like, earlier you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, Kurt Schilling, I mean, he was pretty good during his career and everything. It's a shame that all of the PED usage really caught up with him, and it caused his image to be tarnished, and that's part of the reason why he isn't making it into the Hall of Fame currently. I think if it weren't for the PED usage, and we were just to see him at his untapped full potential, I feel like he would still be good, and he would probably be in the Hall of Fame right now. But it's just kind of the case with a lot of these guys who decided to use PEDs during their career, and now they're just kind of on the outside looking in.
Yeah. And Matt, you got something?
Not really. I pretty much agree with what you said. Well, I haven't done much looking on him really, but he would great. And like Caleb said, if that PED use hadn't caught up with him, he'd be in the hall where he should belong. But is probably on that list of guys who sadly will never go in because of that.
Yeah, definitely. And for our viewers out there, like I said, these aren't the only people that are technically like snubs or restricted lists. There's tons out there, but for the sake of time, I'm limiting myself to 4, so this will be my last one. A guy that's actually been on the ballot the last couple of last 2 years, I think. And this will be, I think, his 3rd year. But I think a guy that's been kind of snubbed out of the Hall of Fame, and I believe he played the game right. I don't recall any possible steroid use linked with him, but there could have been at one point in time. It's K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez, the relief pitcher. So some career numbers for K-Rod. Obviously, he was a reliever, but also read off his win-losses. His wins, he had 52. He had 53 losses in his career. He had a 2.86 career ERA as a closer, compiled over almost 1,000 innings, so 976. He had 437 career saves. He was a 6-time All-Star, World Series champion with the Angels back in 2002, and a 2-time Rolaids Reliever of the Year award winner. So those are some of his stats. Most saves he had in a season, and that's still the record today, is 62. And he got that in 2008 with the Angels.
Wow.
So definitely a record that has been close. It's been close to being broken. I think I recall back when Edwin Diaz was a Mariner. I think he got like 58 or 57, somewhere around there. He had quite a bit. And the Mariners were not all that good, but he still closed out a lot of games. He compiled his save total pretty high. But as far as the actual record being broken, it has not been broken yet. And he led the league actually in saves multiple times. K-Rod did. So 05, 06, and 08, he led the league in saves. And in 08, he actually pitched the most games out of a reliever with 76. So thoughts on that?
That's really impressive statistics. I mean, I feel like with those stats, he definitely should have been in the Hall of Fame. I kind of find it odd that he's kind of been getting passed up.
Yeah, like I say, he still has some time to be inducted on the ballot. So he's not technically at the Veterans Committee yet for him to hopefully get in, but so he still has a chance to be voted in. But the fact that he was not voted in yet is kind of concerning, a little bit, to me. But that's just my personal opinion. Matt, you got anything else?
I don't know why he hasn't been put in yet. I mean, I'm looking at his stats right now, and 2.86 ERA over a 16-year career with 437 saves. I feel like that's enough for a place in the Hall of Fame. Because who's the last person to get to 400 saves?
Oh, I want to say, because right now I think the person that leads active players, I believe, is Kimbrel. And I think he's at like 330 or 340 or something like that.
Craig Kimbrel, as of July this year, is the last pitcher to reach 400 saves.
Oh, he did get 400. Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, so Kimbrel is the last one.
Kimbrel's got 440.
Oh my goodness, I actually underestimated Kimbrel. Okay, my fault, Craig.
His 400th against the Braves on May 26, 2023.
Huh. Funny, he does it against his first team. That's good for Craig. Craig was a Cub for a short period of time, and he wasn't the best with us, but towards the end of his career, he started to kind of work his way back to his former self. But yeah, that's so he actually did pass K-Rod up then for saves. So if anything, I guess that means that if we think K-Rod should be in the Hall of Fame, then I believe we think Kimbrel should probably be in there as well. I'm sure you guys would probably agree with that.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And same with, I'd say, Kenley Jansen too, because Kenley's got 4 more than Kimbrel.
Okay, so yeah, that's 2 other relievers then that need to be talked about whenever their careers are coming to a close. But with that, I think that's pretty much all we have to wrap up. I know that was kind of a long episode, but I'm sure Caleb might be able to edit it down a little bit and make it a little bit shorter in some sections. But
Yeah, I'm sure I could figure some things out.
yeah, but I guess I can kind of close this out here. Thank you for watching the Field and Diamond Talks for the second time. I'm Break, and we'll catch you all later.